And then, so yeah, you just agree and say, got it. And this is just typical. Zoom has put that in now just so people know that they're being recorded. And, let's see here. Dismiss, play. All right, good. And then, so yeah, perfect. That is working. Okay, back to Zoom. All right. So welcome everybody. I'm going to go ahead and start with uh, share my keynote presentation. Al's already on the ball here, putting all kinds of Apple support stuff in. We'll discuss that as we go along. Say hi to everybody out there, everybody. Hello. And as we go along, any Q&A, just you can raise your hand. Al and Lisa and anybody will help alert me if I don't see someone's hand up. And or you can unmute yourself and go ahead and speak up if you'd like. But again, this is free form. We will complete by 11:30 today, so there'll be no break because the WITS, Women in Technology Sisterhood, part of MacNexus, has their normal meeting because we were back a week on ours. And Roy, you've got a question already. Go right ahead. While I'm
Yeah, only on the recording. It says live on YouTube, but I don't see the normal recording light. So I'm not sure
no,
you
but,
are
but did you
recording.
get a little thing that said you're being recorded?
No.
Okay, well, you're being recorded.
Okay,
Yeah.
like I said, I don't see the light that
Well,
I
that's weird
normally
because it
see.
showed up on my iPad, and my iPad
It
is
showed
in.
up on mine. I have on Zoom, the upper left corner live on YouTube.
Yeah.
Right, it says live on YouTube, but it doesn't say recording.
Well, there
Just
was probably there might have been a thing that got dismissed on there, but that's typical. It's just that now Zoom, you may have an older version of Zoom, so it may not have it may have not popped up on yours. So I always recommend every time I get done with a Zoom presentation, or if I'm participating in a Zoom, I immediately go check to see if there's any updates. Don't do it now, but I always check to see if there's updates because I really like to keep my Zoom updated from security aspects, but also from just the aspect of getting all that new stuff.
And how does one check?
When you go up to zoom.us in the upper left, and you come down and say check for updates.
Thank you.
And then it just installs and it'll want your computer password. Roy, did you have another question?
no, I just didn't want to interrupt you, so I thought I'd raise my hand for that.
There you go. No, I did, and I thought I lowered it. So, well, welcome everybody. Travel. I love to travel. We all love to travel, and it looks like now you can start traveling again. But it's, I won't say it's complicated. It just takes a little bit more thought and a little bit more to see what's going on, and you kind of have to adapt, and that's with anything. And today I'm going to try share with you not just the travel tools I've always shared in the past, but how to navigate traveling in this new environment. And like I've always said, and I'm a firm believer, always have 3 trips planned in advance so you will live longer, because you're going to live long enough to do that 3rd trip. And if you always have a 3rd trip out there, hey, you could live forever. And I have to admit, the only time I violated that was last February. Before we knew about COVID, I had been traveling so much, I had not had the opportunity to put my 3 trips in the back pocket like that. And so for me, I was really lucky because I didn't have any of these trips I had to cancel. So I don't recommend that, but again, I was lucky. But and they're adapting, and in fact, there's some good things that have come out of it. The airlines now, and they plan to keep doing it. They're doing like no change fees unless you're on the basic economy, and there's some. While they don't handle things great all the time, they kind of, you know, it seems to have made them change what they're doing a little bit, and they're doing things to encourage you to travel. So again, I'm going to go through that. Um, let's see. Oops, let's go back one. Um, Today is about travel, tools, tips, etc. And traveling, it leaves you speechless, and then turns you into a storyteller. Well, I've always been a bit of a storyteller anyway, and some things I say are true. I just For me, I inherited my love of travel from my parents. My parents, after a long career in the Navy and then other jobs and things like that, they retired at 55, and they would take their travel trailer once a month when they were around and go with their group called Lazy Loafers, and they'd go within 3 miles or 3 hours of Sacramento and spend a long weekend or a week with them, and then come back. And as a young child, I was lucky enough to actually, as a young child into my teenage years, with our travel trailer, we spent a week every summer in Yosemite. And I look back on that and I realize how lucky I was. Back then it was just like, oh yeah, we're going to Yosemite again. And now I think back to how special that was, and especially being able to see the original firefall and interact with bats and doing different things like that. But they in their retirement did a big trip every year, pretty much, sometimes internationally, sometimes down to Mexico and stuff. But what they also did is they did a wonderful thing. For 30 years, they took the entire family, which is just me, but my brother has a lot of kids, and well, he has 3 kids, and then it ended up being their kids and everything else. And we would take a week long trip over Thanksgiving week, either to Hawaii or to Mexico or on a cruise boat. And it was really good, and it passed along to all of us. So, and for me, one of my favorite quotes too that I made up is, you can't go forward by looking over your shoulder. So don't think back about if you had a bad experience on a trip. Go forward and try to create new good experiences. My most recent trip was something that was really, really cool. It's called the Great Race, and you can go to greatrace.com and see it. We were total rookies at this. It's not a race for speed. It's a race for where you cover a certain prescribed route in an accurate time, and for the most of it, you're 5 or 10 miles an hour under the speed limit. So it was really pretty cool. This was it. The cities marked in red are where we spent the night, and the cities in black are where we spent lunch. And in every one of these cities, they would close off Main Street. We had 109 cars in this. They were cars back to 1910, and the newest car could be 1974. And you go along, and it's not on. We do go on freeways to transit from place to place sometimes, but for the most part, it was on rural roads, farm roads. It was fantastic, and it was just wonderful. The people were fantastic. All the people were there, and we would spend nights in hotels, and our traveling circus was basically 500 people strong, because there was myself and Brent, the guy who owned the car, and my best friend, and we had a support crew that drove our truck from stop to stop to stop with our trailer, because obviously once we got to Greenville, then we had to bring the car all the way back. So they would go on a little different route, and they were sightseeing and stuff. One of them is Ken Henry, that you know from the guy that I travel with a lot, and then another 70-year-old guy, and they just had a great time. And so we saw the sights. It was wonderful, and this race is every year, and it's pretty amazing. For me, I was the navigator, and 30 minutes before the start time, a car leaves every minute, but 30 minutes before the start, I get a sheet like you see on the left here, and that sheet has the directions. We can't use a map. We can't use a GPS. In fact, my phone was locked up in the trunk of the car, and we can't even use, I had to take my Apple Watch off. We use an analog speedometer. We use an analog clock, and the only digital thing we can use is a stopwatch. And the stopwatch is because that's how we do corrections. So for instance, so this sheet, the most we got was 29 pages of directions. So this is, I think this was day 3, and this is direction 94 through 100. And if you miss that 30-mile-an-hour sign and you don't change your speed, you're messed up because you don't know if the next narrow bridge sign is the right one or whatever. And then you come to a stop sign. Well, the way that it's done is the optimum time to do this thing is if we look at, say, this, let's say there was a right-hand turn coming up with no stop sign. And it says go 30 miles an hour into the turn and exit at 40 miles an hour. Well, we know you can't go 35 miles an hour through that turn. You slow to 15 miles an hour. So in that case, I would look at the blue on the right-hand side. I would look at the blue chart, and these are charts that we made up. So if you're going in at 25 miles an hour and out at 30, that means I have 2.2 seconds to make up because we slowed down for that turn. So we have to make up that speed because it's all about accuracy. We always get relieved when there's a stop sign, like you can see number 96 where it says LaPorte. Well, for a stop sign, they build in, because no car can decelerate. Let's see, we're coming in at 30. So no car can decelerate from 30 to 0 instantly, and no car can accelerate, even my Tesla, from 0 to 30. But the course is set up that way. So what they do with a stop sign is they say, okay, we add 15 seconds to the optimum time. Well, and you would wait 15 seconds if you could instantly accelerate. But what we did, our calculation is if we're coming in at 30 and going out at 30, it says, actually, that's wrong. It's 10.2. It was supposed to be 8.2. And I just consider the chart on the right. So we leave before the 15 seconds is up, making up for our lack of being able to go super fast. But it's really neat. As a navigator, we would start at 8 in the morning and we would go till 6 in the evening and have a short lunch. And it was really great. The people were wonderful. We were rookies. We ended up being mid-pack. And the best part is, as their slogan is, to finish is to win. Well, we finished every day except the first test day. We got messed up. We missed 2 turns, but luckily that was the trophy run and that didn't count into it. But I have to say, so there were 9 days, and each day there were 5 to 7 legs, and a leg is a timed distance, and you have 5 to 7 of those during the day. We had 5 different instances where on one leg we were within 1 second of perfect. And that was huge to us. And we were just, essentially you're within really a half second. And then finally on the last day, we had a leg that is considered perfect. You get an ace and it's a special sticker. So we did have one leg where we got an ace, and that was great. It was just a blast. This is one of the setups. This is one of the other cars setup. That speedometer on the left is about a $1,500 speedometer that is very accurate. And every morning you do a speedometer calibration test over, say, 20, almost 30 miles, and you can readjust the calibration on your speedometer. There's 4 little screws. You pull that out and you adjust it to make sure you're perfectly accurate with the person that set the rally speedometer. And then on the right-hand side is one of the analog clock, and then you can see these are the tables that are used. So, because your tire pressure, even the temperature of the day can change your accuracy and your speed. And so there is a run done where there are, within 100th of a second, the signs on the side of the highway is what you mark, and you're going at a constant 50 mile an hour. So it's hard for the driver because the driver has to stay exactly at 50. So that's us. Those are our special team uniforms I had embroidered with MG, and it's a 1953 MG TD, and it's pretty tight inside there, but that was us. And it was really neat because we were able to use this Bluetooth communication. So Brent uses this on when he and his wife go out on their dirt bikes. They use this headset communication, and it made it so we could speak to each other, because otherwise, with the wind coming into the car and everything else, there's no way we could have heard each other. So this was one of the cities we stopped in, and they lined the streets with it. There's the car. I have a little story behind this car. My friend Brent, who I met years ago, we met racing on the pro ski tour, but Brent is he's 67, I'm 65. Brent's father purchased this car when Brent was 4 years old. Brent took his driver's test in this car, and he had his first date in this car. And so this car has real history with him, and it's actually a very rare car because it's a special competition version of an MG TD, and it was fun. It went through the whole thing. Bit challenging on some of the hills because the car doesn't have a lot of horsepower, but it was great. It was absolutely fantastic. And this is kind of how it was in some of the places. There's the car. And there's another group. These guys had a 1948 MGTC, or TA it was. So we met them and we became friends with them on the race, and they were doing the same thing and had the same challenges we did. And there's right behind us on this picture on the right, that's a Saab, Saab Sonnet, and that thing those guys are good rally guys. They've done really, really good with that in that old car, but that's a great car. Then you see the Porsche back behind us and stuff. But this is how it was every time we'd roll in for lunch or for the end of the break. They closed down Main Street, and it was like a big party in those towns. This car was the previous winner. They got third place this year, I think. This is a 1916 Hudson. It's a Hudson hill climber, and the older your car is, you get a little bit of an advantage when it comes to scoring, for instance. But these guys, like these guys, when they finish this race over 9 days and over 5 to 7 legs each day, and each leg is independent. If you end up 2 seconds early on one leg, but you're 2 seconds late on the next leg, that doesn't cancel out. That's 4 seconds. These guys end up with it. The winning one was 51 seconds total over 9 days, 2,300 miles, and about 6 legs a day. It's pretty amazing, the people that are really good at this. So another one. This is an interesting car. These guys, they called themselves the Wandering Troubadours of Finland, and they're not from Finland. But this is just a great car. It's an American LaFrance. It's an old. It was an old fire truck, and you'll notice this oil pot on the running board, and you'll notice how dirty they are. Well, while they're running, you'll notice right by the guy's left leg there, that's an exposed gear. So the motor drives that shaft, and that chain goes back and drives that rear tire. So constantly during the day, they have to oil that chain while they're riding. It's just great. Great guys. They had a whole group of people, and it was just fantastic. Just great camaraderie. Another beautiful car. You'll notice all those ACE stickers. Those are from doing a perfect leg, and they're from different times. The ACE stickers for this time, they've got quite a few there. And that's just an old, just kind of a converted car. This guy was great, and you can see some of the other cars in the background. Guys are always standing around talking about their cars. So that was it. Any questions on the Great Race before I move on? It was very, very cool. And yes, I would do it again, and we'll see. We're not sure. Next year they go from Rhode Island to North Dakota, because Rhode Island and North Dakota are the only 2 states in the U.S. that they have not done the race, that they've not stopped the race in. Bev, go ahead.
Any women contestants or participants?
Well, I got a picture of that. The winners were 2 young girls, 2 sisters. And yes, there were a couple all-women teams, which were just great, and it's good for the sport. There were, like, the mentor that told us, oh, I didn't have that picture. That's interesting. I thought I did. Oh, man, I took it out. Anyway, the winners were, it was interesting. their parent, well, the mentor that we had, it's a husband and wife team out of Penn Valley by Grass Valley, and they do it together. She's the navigator, he's the driver. That's not necessarily recommended because this is competitive and it gets a little contentious. In fact, those guys in the Saab, it was funny. They've been doing this a long time, and after the race, they don't talk to each other for a month because they kind of let everything cool down because you never have a perfect run. But the young girls, Olivia and Jenny Gentry, uh, they're probably mid 20s. They won the $50,000 check, and their father got, I think he was like fourth place, and in the exact same type of car, so they were able to use the same charts. But they and I heard this in one of the videos that when they awarded the check, they talked about these girls have been coming to this with their parents for so long. They started out selling the programs as volunteers every time they made a stop. And then in the rookie division, the first time you're only a rookie once. They won the rookie division, they won the sportsman division, and now they're a grand national. And they're just the nicest, wholesome, just having fun. And boy, everybody else is like, they were having a blast the whole time, and they're just really good. And they were within 51 seconds total over this entire time. So they must have gotten 30 aces, I would imagine.
Wow.
So, but it's good because they're young and the female presence and the whole thing. And it's not a speed thing. It's an accuracy thing. So it's sometimes a little boring for the driver. The navigator says, okay, you're going to go 30 miles an hour for a minute and 28 seconds. And then when it clicks off, I say, okay, now go up to this speed and things like that. So their job is to keep the speedometer right at that little bit. But it's challenging. If you have an uphill and it slows you down, you've got to correct and make up for that as it flattens out. But anyway, any other questions before we move on? Thanks for indulging me on that. This was travel. It was just a wonderful, wonderful thing. They had barbecues set up. We got keys to the city, all that other stuff. And what was amazing is there's 109 cars. So it was over an hour and a half because everybody comes in a minute apart. And there were people lining the streets the entire time. And the best thing is once we park on the main street, and our cars have to stay there till 8 p.m. So we go up and, we'll go to like the local bar, or we go to where they have the meals for us. Sometimes there were bands and things like that. So it was awesome. If you ever get a chance, and I'll let everybody know if it comes through this way. 2 years ago, it came from Nevada through Grass Valley and up to Oroville, going up north from there.
Sounds like a great adventure.
Oh, it was absolutely, it was. It was a good adventure. All right, so travel.
Well, good for you. Good for you.
Well,
Ken.
thank you.
Looks great. And it was fun to see those old cars. My dad loved them, and so it just
Oh.
kind of
Yeah.
brings me a little smile. So
Well,
thanks.
and so whenever we stopped, some of these cars, there's some cars there that are priceless, but they're out being used. When Brett and I were young kids, we were influenced by stuff like that. So what we would do is, I can remember many times you see two little young brothers, or even a brother and a sister, or two girls, and we'd ask, I'd go over to the parents and I say, is it okay? They can go ahead and sit in the car if they want. And then what I make them do is paper, rock, scissors to see who got to sit in the driver's seat. And these kids would go crazy and the parents got to take photos from them. But that's what gets people hooked on it. Young kids growing up these days, when we were all growing up, a car meant something because it was our first real freedom. And now these days, kids take so much longer before they get their license and things like that. So, it just is amazing. All right, so moving on along. Travels, and I saw this quote a long time ago, and it makes sense. Travel is the only thing you buy that makes you richer. So, So this is kind of how I felt recently. Here I am, all dressed up and nowhere to go kind of thing. And, thank goodness we could still do some stuff during COVID. But I'll tell you, I was able to ski this last winter, and I'm glad I could. There was no skiing in Europe. France was shut down. Austria was shut down. It was just they couldn't do it, and it's amazing that we were able to, and everybody adapted. So managing through the coronavirus crisis, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit here. Again, like I always say, you can't go forward by looking over our shoulder. So let's talk about what we can do to be proactive and get out there and travel and have a good time and do it safely. Life is short and the world is wide, and this is appropriate for now because of having to manage this. Difficult roads often lead to beautiful destinations. This is China on the left, and this is on the trail into Machu Picchu on the right. So these links, I have at a place for you. I just want to point these out. Al, if you go to kenspencer.com, click on travel. These links are listed there if you want to put them in there. But what I'm going to do right now is go to these. So the first one is, it's an article that was in the Wall Street Journal, and it's a wonderful article. And I'll show you how to get there in a minute, but this has some great resources, links, different things, and I'm going to discuss most of these. And I've got these websites up. But I want to go to one that I found very useful. And this is from Kayak. And basically, it kind of shows you, if you look down here at the bottom, green is open, orange is open with restrictions, and red is closed. And with this, you can hover over the different cities. For example, I have just booked a trip to Morocco and then a second trip going from Morocco to Jordan because I really want to see Petra and the Wadi Rum Desert and things like that. And they're both orange. So they're travel with restrictions. Now, I chose the United States, and then when I click on Morocco, for instance, it comes up and says, most visitors from the United States need to provide a negative COVID test and or quarantine. So if I click show more, it brings it up and it says, if you're vaccinated, and I assume the majority of you are, if you're a vaccinated visitor from this, you can enter without restrictions. If you're unvaccinated, you just need to provide a negative COVID test within 72 hours. And it talks about how you do this. Now, these will change and these will get updated as you go along. Now, most countries, like for instance, Canada still requires a quarantine if you're going to go in. But like on this trip, so I'm flying round trip from Sacramento to Casablanca, and I'm transiting through Canada. It's a United flight, and then it's shared with Air Canada. But since I'm not leaving the airport, that's no problem, because as long as you stay in the secure area. Now, if you want to have a layover in those areas, there's other things you may need to do, and in Canada, that wouldn't necessarily be possible. So this is a great tool. There's another one here that I found that was the second link. Oops, this one. Oh, there we go. It timed out. Oh, that's not the one. Let me move my... Oh, this is the one. The IATA. So this is where you can hover over each one and it'll tell you what's going on. IATA is the International Association of Travel Agents, and it's really pretty good. But some of the, there's some mobile tools now from, let's go back on this. There we go. That was the Kayak. There are some great sites, Delta, this one here, Sherpa. You can look at your trip and it'll tell you what you can do. All of these will be linked, and I'm going to go back to the keynote to show you here. So if you go to kenspencer.com and click on travel, you'll get what looks like this, and I'm going to show you that website now. So if I go to Safari and go to kenspencer.com, if I click on travel, I've added a new one down here that says traveling in the COVID era. All the other links from this presentation will be up here, the presentation and the travel links. But if I click on this, it takes you to the Wall Street article, and
I put them all in the chat links.
great. And then this is the link. And then in case it requires you to go behind the paywall, I have a PDF of the entire article with clickable links. Obviously, these won't click on that. But I don't know if it's behind the paywall because I have a Wall Street subscription. And it's things like if you have the COVID thing, how you can scan it to your phone, how to go through, and there's different places where they're going to give you more or less a passport. And the other thing it talks here is Google Flights. The later part of this presentation is going to be a whole primer on Google Flights, because Google Flights is how to really plan good air travel. And it's amazing. It's such a tool. I have spent numerous hours on it recently. Okay, I'll move back to the keynote again here. And so Journey of 1,000 Miles begins with one step. This was the part of the Inca Trail. I didn't do the whole Inca Trail. And boy, those steps were kind of arduous, but it was well worth it. Some of the shots. This was I mentioned to some people earlier, this was where we had breakfast and lunch and most of the time dinner in the middle of the Ecuadorian Amazon, and there were no mosquitoes or bugs. So this was I did another major trip after this. Amazon off. But you know, part of the thing about doing travel is to experience it. And be bold. I'm probably not going to go back to the Ecuadorian Amazon rainforest again. So, little things like this red painting on my face. Well, that was interesting. I asked one of our guides. We were having lunch in this traditional village, and it was a very traditional lunch with smoked or steamed fish and everything else straight out of the river. But I saw this little thing outside that looked like it actually, believe it or not, looked like a coronavirus. It's this little bulb with spikes on it. And I said, what is that thing out there? Whether it was fruit or whatever. And he brought it in and he cut it open, and it actually looked like pomegranate inside. But he took a piece of bamboo and wiped it in it. And he said, this is what we use in the natives to put paint on your face. And not for war, but it was just for ceremonies and stuff. So he says, do you want me to? I said, okay. So he put it on my face like that. Then, of course, he said, oh, and it lasts about 30 days. Well, it turns out that he was just kidding, which was pretty good. But it was neat. But these things came out on this skewer. And there were 19 of us. And I saw there were only about 8 of them on this skewer. So in my mind, I'm going, that might be something special. Well, what those are, it's contocuros, and it is over an open flame. They're on a skewer, and they're just kind of barbecued. And this is beetle larvae. Well, it's actually considered a huge delicacy there, and it's very healthy. So since it's a delicacy, nobody else in my group was going to try it. And I go, oh yeah, I'll try it. And because I want to try it. I mean, if it's a delicacy, it's got to be not too bad. Well, and there's some things I won't eat. But anyway, I ate it, and it tasted like buttered lobster. It was absolutely fantastic. So then a few other people tried it. And at the end, there were still 2 left on the thing. And I asked anybody else, I go, does anybody else want this? And I went back and had a second one. And it was really good. Now, They also, as a delicacy, have the live version of it. And the I asked the guide, I said, "Does that taste as good?" And he said, "No, it doesn't." But he proceeded to eat the live one and show us what it was like. And no, that's okay. But it's supposed to have very healing qualities. But just get the full experience of when you travel. It just, I had one morning when I was in Cambodia and I was Angkor Wat. Well, our group wasn't scheduled to go to Angkor Wat till the afternoon for sunset, but I really like sunrises. So I'm in the hotel and we weren't supposed to catch the bus to go to another place until 7 in the morning. So I said, well, Machu Picchu, oh gosh, not Machu Picchu, Angkor Wat opens at 5:30. So I went out, I got up really early. I went out at 5 o'clock and got a tuk-tuk. I was there in line at 5:30, got in, and I got sunrise at Angkor Wat. I came back. The rest of the group is eating a buffet breakfast. I grabbed a couple things really quick, got on the bus, and had the rest of the day. And I'd already been to Angkor Wat, and Angkor Wat was a very, very special place. So, tips on planning, and this is Google Flights. I'm going to go into Google Flights at the end. This is great for domestic, for international, and there's just some amazing, amazing tools. And frankly, it's one reason to have a Gmail address because it will store historical things for you, which I'll show you in a bit. The other thing I really like is informed delivery. I know a lot of people are doing this now. When I'm traveling, so I established an account with USPS. So now I can manage my mail stoppage. Many times you might be extending a trip 3 days, or you might be coming home 3 days early. Like I originally was going to drive back from this car race, the Great Race, but I flew back, so I was home 3 days early. Well, I was able to change my mail and say, okay, start delivering it early. So it's informed delivery with United States Postal Service. And what happens is every day around 8 a.m., you get a picture of the mail that would be coming into your mailbox later that day. So it's also a security thing because if you have a box that gets broken into, then you can know what it was you were supposed to get that day. So it's very, very good. It's free. I think they put a $1 charge on your card just to verify your identity, but I think that gets returned. Another thing that's, this is, and it's getting crowded again. In fact, on the way back, it was crazy. The guy that I was traveling with that flew back, he was our support crew. He had Gold Bond foot powder in his carry-on, and it was just, but somehow it set off the things. It took a half hour for them to clear that, well, I guess he's okay. And he says, just throw the thing away. He'll get more, but it just set off the different things. But air travel, it's sometimes some people call it travel theater or security theater, but, try to think about it and plan accordingly. Luckily, we were at the airport an hour and a half ahead of time, so we were still an hour before our flight. Remember, international flights, you want to be there.
Very interesting, actually. Very interesting if you want to hear about travel.
So TSA Pre is $75, and some of the credit cards will pay for that. They'll reimburse you for it. I really encourage it. Otherwise, you may randomly get it with different checks, but it's nice because you don't have to take your shoes off, your belt, etc. But what I prefer, because I travel internationally a bit, is I pay $25 more. Well, that's TSA Pre. It's good for 5 years. I'm not sure about the wait times right now, but you can get it in Sacramento. But I like Global Entry. Global Entry is $25 more. It's good for 5 years. And with Global Entry, you also get TSA Pre. So what I do is I have my Global Entry, or what's called a Trusted Traveler number, and I put that number in all the different airline websites, and it's part of my profile. So therefore, when it generates a ticket for me, it gives me TSA pre on the ticket. Now, the nice thing is mine is actually due to expire in January, but you sign up again, and as long as you're on the wait list, there's a 24-month grace period now. So in other words, mine is good for another 2 years past January. So global entry is fantastic. They have another system now. So your original one, you have to get conditionally approved. And once you're conditionally approved, since there's such a waiting list to go to San Francisco, and it's beyond 6 months now to get an appointment, the way they're working it, it's called interview on entry. So if you come back into the States on any most international airports, when you go to clear customs, so again, if you're like I'm flying back when I'm coming back from Jordan or Casablanca, I'll be landing in Chicago. So that'll be where I clear customs. Well, when I clear customs, I can then go, they'll have a gate that you can go to after you clear customs. You go in and you can do your interview. You wait in line right there, and it's usually very short. And I will be able to do my interview without having to go to San Francisco. And that will give me another 5 years because I've already been conditionally approved. Now, if you're flying back, even though you have to do a real interview in San Francisco normally, if you're flying back into Sacramento and that is your first international stop when you clear customs here, they are offering this in San Francisco. And it's just basically they need to have officers there to clear you through customs, so they'll bring you in through global entry, and they'll do your interview right then, and that's wonderful. Roy, you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, global entry is wonderful. When we cleared through SFO, it was a breeze, and other people were in a long line. But I just checked ours. We keep it in the safe deposit box until we need it. I think it's good for 10 years.
No, your passport's good for 10 years. Global entry's only good for 5.
Okay, I thought our dates were way off, but I'll double check.
Well, check on that. And if it does expire, there's now a 24-month grace period, so you get 2 years. Mine was expiring. Yours may be longer, but it's my understanding it was always 5 years. But give it a check. But remember, it's essentially quote 7 years right now because of COVID, and actually just because of the big response. They know that they know that it's been tough for them to get the appointments done.
Yeah. The other thing I'll just mention, since we're talking about international, is your passport. You have to have at least 6 months left on it.
And in some countries, it's a year. So yeah, that's a very, very important thing. And don't forget, many countries you need to get visas. So for instance, China, I went 5 years ago. I had to get a visa for China. I had to get a visa for Ecuador. I won't need a visa for Morocco, but I'll need a tourist visa for Jordan. But I can do it online ahead of time and then just pay the fee when I enter. Mm-hmm. So check all that. That's very, very important. And the U.S. State Department has pretty good setup for that. And more of the countries are automating it and making it so you can do it online.
And how long is the interview for the global entry?
How long does the interview take? Boy, I want to say 15 minutes maybe. And they just basically go through and kind of re-ask you the questions that you had there. And, I was like a little nervous. I got nothing to be nervous about, but you're just kind of always, and it's not a big deal. What they're trying to do is they are trying to make their job easier, because the idea is they're establishing, you have to have certain paperwork to show that you're who you are, that you live where you are, etc. And therefore, by being a trusted traveler, you're able to go through these other lines because they know who you are. And it's I don't know anybody that hasn't been able to get it, but it's very, very beneficial. And especially just to be able to get the TSA pre. And you can do TSA pre, it's the same thing. There's I don't think it's an interview process. I think it is, but I don't think it's as extensive. But it's really not. It's not probing. They're just doing verification. And then the other thing I should mention is if you have global entry or TSA pre, don't abuse it. In other words, don't say, "Oh, well, they're never going to check me," because then you'll never get it again. And you want to be conscientious and you want to declare if you're bringing stuff in and things like that, because they still have the option of doing it. And like with food and different things like that, they have the dogs in the airport, and those dogs can smell anything. So, any other questions on global entry or TSA pre? Okay. This is something, and I'm not positive it's still enforced, but I think it is. In Roseville, you can do passport. This is first time for passport, but they're not doing renewals. And the other thing is passports have been backed up a bit. So where I did mine the last time is I went to the main library in downtown Sacramento, right in by the Wells Fargo building there. So, Bev, you've got a question? Go ahead.
Oh, just a comment about the dogs and the smell. I was coming back through one place and I had conscientiously eaten my apple before going into the area where you couldn't have food, but I also didn't have a place to throw it away. So I'm carrying this apple core in my hand, and there is a guy and a dog following behind me.
That's funny. They're pretty good.
Oh, yeah. It was impressive.
Roy, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if they still do it, but when we renewed our passport, we did it at the West Sacramento main post office.
Yeah, different post offices do it, and it's but it's just and that's constantly changing. So judge by that. I know that the one down in at the main post office was pretty extensive. The main library. So this is pretty kind of TSA, and again, by having TSA pre or global entry, you do pass through. You pass through with less scrutiny, which is great. And so basically, coming back from an international flight, I know that when I came back I was skiing up in at Whistler 2 years ago, and we went to the airport in Vancouver, and I saved an hour and 15 minutes over the other people I was traveling with. So the first time I got it was on the way back from China, and I'm thinking, oh man, I got this global entry now, and I go in and it was the middle of the night and there was nobody in either line, but I still went through the global entry. But all you do is it takes your palm print. You don't have to have a card. You don't have to have anything else. They take your palm print, and you basically that little white paper that you usually fill out on the plane, you don't have that says, are you bringing anything in? You do it there. So it's pretty good.
And Ken, by the way, as far as I know, the downtown library is not open yet.
Okay, thank you. Bertie, got a question? Go ahead, or comment.
Oh, hi, Ken. I have a passport due in August, and I'm not going anywhere yet. But as you say, we have to plan ahead. So if we go to the downtown post office or West Sacramento post office for renewal, what specific things do we need to take to renew our passport?
Check with, so basically if you go to USPS, they kind of have some things on there and what you do, or go to statedepartment.gov. I'm not up on that. And the other thing I should mention, when you get a passport, I highly recommend spending the $20 extra and getting what's called a passport card. The passport card is credit card sized, and it allows you to go to Canada and Mexico and the Caribbean and on cruise boats without having to take your real passport, except if you fly. If you fly, you still have to have a real passport. I almost got screwed up. I was doing a cruise to with my brother and his family to Alaska, and it was stopping in Canada. And we flew into anyway. I'm really lucky that I took my passport and said it's my passport card, because for air flights to any of that, it won't do it. It's simply on a cruise boat or by car or walking across the little card. And the other thing is, you guys have to be very, very, very protective of your passport. One of the travel things, Johnny Jet, that I subscribe to his email, Johnny Jet, JETT.com, Johnny jet. His now wife, it was fiance at the time, they were bicycling in, gosh, somewhere in Eastern Europe. And she had her passport in her back pocket, and it fell out during the bike ride. Well, and so they were on a sojourn, really, or seaborne cruise, and they couldn't get back on the boat. They went back. She was a Canadian citizen, and they went to the Canadian embassy. They had all the information, everything else. They're very savvy travelers, and they couldn't do anything. The only thing they could get them would be an emergency thing that could get them back to Canada, not to further their trip. And they could have got that within 24 hours. And it was just it's a very interesting story. And it just tells you be very, very, very protected of your passport. Because they say on the black market, a passport is worth about $5,000. So I always wear a neck thing with my passport in it, and I keep it buried underneath so it can't be pickpocketed. You just have to be very cognizant of that. Think of your passport as having a $5,000 bill in your pocket.
And do you ever take a picture of the inside of your passport?
I do, but that doesn't do any good.
Right.
It helps when you try to get the passport, but the problem is when you go get this emergency passport at the U.S. Embassy and everything, it will only be for you to get a trip direct back home. In other words, it's the only way you can get out of the country. You won't be able to continue your trip. So yes, I do. I have a picture of my license also. And the DMV, by the way, is in the process of getting, and some states are doing it now too, where you can actually have an app on your phone that would have it. And of course, now with the new Real ID, that will help. But for international travel, just be very protective of your passport.
Thank you. Also, Ken, global entry, is there a site that we need to?
Yeah, just Google global entry. I believe it's GOES something. GOES something. Al, as I can tell from his movements, is already getting the link for it, and he'll post it in the chat. And all of those are in the PDF, the other PDF of the presentation. I have all the links in there too. And Al, that might help you too if you pull up in kenspencer.com the links from the previous presentation. Go ahead, Lisa.
Just a comment on the renewal process for a passport. You can also do it online.
Completely online now.
Yeah, you go get your picture. Costco takes them. I think you have to have two. They give you whichever. You buy them. You fill out the application. You download it from the site. You fill out the application, write your check, and you send your passport, the application, your check, and your pictures off to, I guess it's the State Department, and they send you a brand new passport. Good
deal. Good to know. So you want to plan that between your trips.
Also,
and I know with global entry, and I think the same applies with a passport, you can do it when you're a year away from your passport or global entry expiring.
And if you have an expired passport, don't panic. There's a grace period to renew it. So if your passport expires on July 11th, 2021, you haven't done anything yet, just get started. You're okay.
Yeah, because rather than being a new passport, then again, it's still the renewal. So.
Yeah.
So you mean a grace period on the renewal, but not a grace period for traveling with it.
Right.
Be expired. And again, that's what the airlines, and it's the country you're entering. It determines whether you have to have nothing 6 months or a year before your passport expires. That's the country you're entering, and that's their own regulations. Bev, go ahead. Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, it's a question to Lisa. With Costco closing down their photo shops, do you know if they're still doing the passport photos?
Oh, good question. I didn't realize they'd been closing down. I don't have
like
that.
They closed out their photo shops quite a few months ago.
Well, I wonder if were they doing the photo over where you get your membership card?
Or were no, they were doing it in the photo center or
there are lots of places around and some post offices that do it. You can do it yourself. You just have to meet the criteria that it is.
Yeah, and they're really critical about the picture criteria too.
Very, very much so. Yes.
Walgreens does it.
Yeah,
Yes.
from my experience, I did the Walgreens route, and when I went down to the regional location there in Roseville, they rejected the photo. I mean, I got my money's back from Walgreens and all that stuff, but you can, if you go down to the regional place, as I understand it, it gets processed a little bit quicker, and they can take the photo right there of you, and it meets all their criteria and stuff. So it was just to make an appointment and have all this paperwork ready ahead of time, and you know that's the fastest route we've found to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bev, I just confirmed it. You're right. No more passport photos at Costco.
Oh, you're quick.
Great job. Thanks, everybody. So we talk about leaving your passport in the safe, or better to leave it at the hotel in the safe. But here's a little trick I read a long time ago. Let's say you're in a hotel for 3 days and you've got stuff in the safe. Take one of the shoes that you're going to wear the next day. One, not the whole pair, one of the shoes, and put it in the safe, because you will not leave your hotel room wearing only one shoe the next day. So you'll remember to take your stuff out of the safe.
That's really important. When we were at Petra, I had left a bunch of stuff in the safe, including several $100s. And
it's very common.
I had to pay someone to go retrieve it and bring it back to me in Amman. So
Yeah.
put the shoe in, double check.
One shoe.
Triple check.
Again, one shoe, and it's the one you're going to wear the next day. That was a airline flight attendant that I read that tip from. So travel insurance, I'm not going to belabor this. This is one of the best sites to go for. They do not sell travel insurance, but they evaluate travel insurance. And travel insurance is one of those things that you get to choose what level of protection you want. You never should buy, if you're on a cruise, don't buy cruise insurance from the cruise company, because why would they? It's not in their best interest to help you out, and you're having, why have them fight with themselves? So anyway, independent trip insurance, I like Allianz, was who I used to do mine through, but my credit card that I use now gives me really comprehensive travel insurance, and the card has a decent cost per year, but it offsets what I was paying on travel insurance. And if you're traveling a bit, don't also look at not just insuring the one trip. Look at buying insurance for the year, and then it will cover multiple trips. But the real thing with this is it's one of the places where you can choose the amount of coverage you want. You can insure a trip that you could cancel for any reason at all. You'll pay more for it, but then you have more. It's really like buying things at a cafeteria. You choose what you want. InsureMyTrip.com, and then Allianz, and then this is the card that I use, is the Chase Sapphire Reserve. There's reasons that card is now up to $550 a year, but the first $300 you spend on any kind of travel is giving you straight credit. So instead of being $550 a year, now it's $250 a year. But $250 a year is what I used to spend for a year's worth of travel insurance. So now the card is almost a break even, and I get entry into the priority pass lounges. So when I'm having a long layover in an airport, I can go in there. Sometimes they have showers, sometimes they have beds, but they always have comfortable seats and things like that. So that's an added bonus to it. And the other thing is along with the travel insurance, it is, if you rent a car and you refuse the insurance coverage, it is primary insurance coverage, where most credit card companies are secondary. In other words, you would use the rental car company would go after your insurance company first, and then anything it didn't cover, the card would cover as primary insurance. And American Express does this on some of their cards too. They are the primary one, and your insurance company would never have anything of it. And there's some other features with the card, but for me, when they take off my first $300 of travel, and the very first time I got this card, I went to a Mac conference in San Francisco, and that was considered, I paid for my parking. and they immediately credited me that all the way up to the first $300 I spent on any type of travel, and it's automatic. So when you hear it's 550, remember it's really only 250 because you're using that card for any travel. And the beauty is too, it accumulates miles very, very quick. So this is the Chase Sapphire Reserve, and they also have the Chase Sapphire Preferred. It's $95 a year, but it doesn't have the same coverages and does not give you the priority pass. So the beauty of this is when I earn miles on this, if I redeem those miles, like for instance, in January, I'm going skiing in Zermatt, Switzerland, and TAP, Air Portugal, had a great deal on flights, and I'm going using that, and I used my points for it, and my points were worth 1.25%. So I was able to use my accumulated points for that flight, even on business class. So it's a very good card. The Platinum card from American Express is also very good. But these are the links. There's Al. You'll be able to get these on the PDF. Smarter Travel is one I subscribe to. Johnny Jet. Oh, I thought it was 2 T's. I may have this wrong. Al can verify that. Clark.com. I love Clark Howard in there. TSA PreCheck. The Global Entry, which Al has already linked. The other site I use a lot, and in fact, so I was just traveling. I just was planning this trip. I was looking at SeatGuru.com because when I'm comparing between airlines, what kind of flight they have, what kind of seats they have, and then when it comes time to choose the seat, I want to see what the seat is like that I'm choosing, because they'll say, oh no, this one's a bad seat because it butts up against something else. Yelp for restaurant reviews. TripAdvisor, which is fantastic for learning about hotels and things like that. And if you're cruising, Cruise Critic is also very, very good there. A whole bunch of other ones. We're going to talk about Google Flights again, Google Travel. A newsletter I subscribe to, theflightdeal.com. I was able to fly to Medellin, Colombia 4 months later for $360 round trip on the Flight Deal. Travelzoo is fantastic. They don't sell trips, but they link to other travel places. Travelocity, Exit Fares or Deals, Airfare Watchdog, Scott's Cheap Flights. I now subscribe to that one, and it's really pretty good. Cruise Deals with CrewCon. Kayak is a really good one that you can set. If you're thinking about going somewhere, you can set it in there, and it'll give you alerts as far as you can set to get alerts when the airfare goes down and things like that. Mobissimo is great for international searches. Costco Travel is very, very good, and especially cruises. A lot of times you'll get really good bonuses if you do cruises through them, but hotels, car reservations. Actually, speaking of car reservations, I have to tell you, we flew back from Greenville, South Carolina to Reno because Gary that I was with and my car were in the warehouse in Fallon where we departed from. Fallon is an hour east of Reno. So I kept trying to get rental cars in Reno, and there were no rental cars available, one-way rental cars to go from Reno to Fallon. So I looked at Uber. Uber was going to be $126, but then I got thinking, wow, the Uber guy will see, oh yeah, that's an hour each way, that's 2 hours, and they'd refuse it. So I said, you know what, let's think outside the box. I reserved a one-way U-Haul rental from Reno to Fallon. It was like $125. So I got a cab from the Reno airport to the closest U-Haul. I got in the U-Haul. We put our 2 bags in the big 10-foot box in the back of the U-Haul, and we proceeded to drive to Fallon and did a one-way rental and dropped it off there. So it wasn't elegant, but it worked, and it had good air conditioning. So you got to think about things like that. Insure My Trip, Clark.com, TSA, we already went through those. Yep, that's pretty much it. 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than the ones that you did do. And that was Mark Twain, and this is actually one of my trips. This is Mesa Arch in Canyonlands. And boy, I'll tell you, nothing like the parks in Utah. There are just, they're all wonderful, and they're easily accessible. And Years ago, I remember I took my mom and she didn't even get out of the car except like to just stand next to the car in the turnouts because she was 80 years old, but she was able to see most of these parks and it was great. And really experience it. You know, this was the elephant experience that I had in Thailand. There's some controversy on it, but if you go with accredited ones that treat the elephants well, they actually need it because these mahouts have to make money to feed the elephants because these elephants used to go into the forest and they'd harvest the teak wood and the teak, but they're no longer able to harvest it. Well, the elephants still need to be fed, and the problem is if they can't, and they have a great life. They work, you know, like this until like 2 o'clock, and they get the rest of the afternoon off. And as soon as an elephant turns 40, the mahouts take care of the elephants for the rest of their life, and they don't have to do anything. They bring food for them, and just it's amazing. Just get down and experience it, but do it responsibly and realize, you know, research it a bit. But it was wonderful, and the elephants are great. And you know, if the elephants were having such a bad time, they're not caged. They're not even. They can leave anytime they want. So, but that was Thailand on the right. So tools. This is probably one of my favorite bags. It's from Osprey, and the really neat thing with this is the Meridian, I think. Yeah, it is. There it is. On the left-hand side, there's a small backpack that clips to it, and then I can wear it as a very small, just really thin stuff backpack. But it's got wheels. It's got a pull-up handle. But as you can see on the right, I can make it into a backpack and carry it around that way, which really helped when I was down in Ecuador because we had to get on and off of canoes and boats and things like that with our luggage. And it's really well made, and you pay a little more for Osprey. And REI is a good source for that stuff. And you know, it's a good healthy bag. And then what I do is for a little extra, you can buy over these packs you can get a rain cover, and they're fairly inexpensive. And I actually put the rain cover on when I check it also, so it helps protect it. Most of these backpack type things have that. Scotty vest, I swear by. I put when I'm flying anywhere, even though I can go through TSA pre, I take my Apple Watch off, I take everything out of my pockets, and I put it in a zipped pocket in my Scotty vest. And on my left chest, my phone is always there, and my passport is always in my right chest, and my wallet is usually in the same where my passport is. So all I do is I tap both sides. I know I'm good. I go through TSA. I take my vest off. I put it in the tub. It goes through. On the other side, I put my Scotty vest back on. And they make a Scotty vest that's super thin. When I travel in summer, it's thin, very, very thin. And I also do have a warmer one for winter. But it's fantastic. And it's because everything zips up. So then when I go through TSA, I don't put my stuff back in my pockets because I'm always concerned that when I'm sitting on the plane, stuff will come out of my pocket. So I just leave it on my Scotty vest. I hang the Scotty vest or have it sitting in my lap when I'm on the plane, and I go into and get my stuff in and out of the Scotty vest because then I have everything in one spot and I always know where everything is and it's sealed. And it's also very pickpocket proof that way because everything's in the front. I really encourage Scotty Vest. And if you sign up for their email, you'll know when they have specials coming up on them. Scotty Vest kind of started originally when we used to have wired headphones and stuff. They had it so you could have those inside the Scotty Vest and stuff. But with Bluetooth headsets and stuff, that's not much of an issue anymore. Oh, that's probably not a live link. Sorry, that's an old one. You can try it. You might get 30% off. So the other thing is, this is one of my best purchases ever, and I took it on our trip with us, and I didn't need it, but just the functionality of a poncho like this, that's just a big poncho. It's totally waterproof. It's not breathable like Gore-Tex, but it is breathable because it's open on the sides. Put your arms through it, and I find for photography and everything else, this is very, very, very functional. And it was $16 on Amazon. and it's just in a small pouch. And I always have it with me everywhere I go. Umbrellas are great, but if it's really windy. But the other thing is, if you're being mobile and going around, just a poncho like this. And you can get some cheap plastic ones, the ones that are just like plastic bags. But this one, $15, and you'll never, if you have it, you'll probably never need it. Also, I travel with a belt that has a plastic belt buckle on it. So and it's not a big deal because I have TSA Pre now, but it's just very convenient, because the other thing is that belt can be utilized for other tasks if something comes up. But the one I use now is in the top here. This is a plastic money belt I got on Amazon, and I can hide money in the zipper compartment all the way around it. No, it's not wide enough for credit cards, but if you fold the money in half, it can stay in there, and it's very, very, very safe. First of all, people wouldn't think to look there. There are pickpockets in a lot of cities. That's a concern when I'm in Casablanca, and it'll be a little concern when I'm in Lisbon. But, so fanny packs are coming back. They call them hip pouches now. Fanny packs are very functional, and it's not uncool to wear fanny packs. But one thing you have to be careful with fanny packs is, first of all, you always want to have the fanny pack in front of you. But remember, your buckle in the back is vulnerable to be unlocked. But money belts are important if you're traveling internationally. In fact, I just read an article where Rick Steves, who's a great travel guy, he was pickpocketed in some city, and he just says, man, I should have worn my money belt. The other thing I always carry is some extra webbing straps like this, because you never know. You might find something you can't live without and you want to put it in. It will also help compress your luggage, or you can add things to your luggage. Or let's say you're pulling your luggage and you've got another cart you need to pull behind it, or things like that. It's just important. And if you forget your belt, these can always act as a belt. So they're just webbing I get them with a buckle, or a snap buckle, but you can do a webbing one like this. They're really important. I remember one time I forgot my camera strap, so I was able to utilize one of these as my camera strap to hang around my neck. Most of the airports now have, actually it's funny, in China they have both warm and cool water. But so I travel with, you can travel with this collapsible water bottle like this, but I travel with a full-size water bottle, and then obviously you empty it before you go through TSA, and then after that you can fill it up inside the airports. The majority of the time these are filtered, but don't depend on that. But they usually are. Neck pouch on the right. I always travel with a neck pouch. I can put my passport in it. I can keep my phone in it. I keep money in it. I keep a whistle. It's very important if you're in groups. I have a small flat whistle that's very loud when you blow it. Let's say you get separated from your group or your family. The whistle is wonderful. It's very, very loud. Let's say you just happen to fall and hurt yourself. You can whistle with the whistle a lot louder than you can scream. But these neck pouches are great. And then what I do is I have a tether. Al, look up, it's iPhone tether, Black Rapid on Amazon. Black Rapid iPhone tether, or phone tether. And I hook it to the loop on here. So my phone, if I'm taking pictures, is always where if I let go of it, it will not fall. It'll come to it. But I do encourage an inexpensive waterproof case for your phone. The phones are pretty much waterproof these days, but these usually have a neck lanyard or things. And the nice thing is it doesn't get beat up that way. But for the most part, I just keep my phone in a case and have it on a tether. Black Rapid is the one, Al. I'm sure I'll do a link. When you fly, most people catch colds and stuff because your nasal passages dry out. So air, which I like this saline nasal gel, works. Or I actually keep just a little thing of Vaseline in my shaving kit. And then of course, these days we all know about Purell and the wet wipes and things like that. I really lucked out because I had bought from Amazon, in October before COVID, I bought these individual wipes because the one thing you always want to wipe down on a plane, and I'm not very germ phobic at all, but the darn trays are sometimes just not real clean on the planes. So I bought some of these little single-use hand wipes. Well, the only way I could get them from Amazon was like buying a case of them. And so I had a bunch of them. So I was set right when COVID started, when we were having to wipe everything down. But those are things to consider. Amazon, if you have Amazon Prime, and what it does is Amazon off. Of course, I triggered my device. You're able to download most of the movies on Prime to your iPad or to your phone, not to a computer. But that way you can do them when you travel. But remember, if you're going on either a super long trip or if you go on one trip and then another, a lot of times you have to make sure you connect in there in between to know that you're back in, you're in the States at one point. But you can download them to your device and play them on the plane. You can also do that with Netflix and not regular YouTube. Oh, where'd the slide go? Am I one off? Well, anyway, if you're a subscriber to YouTube TV, there's a new thing you can do. If you pay $20 a month extra, you can actually download your shows on YouTube TV, because otherwise they're streaming, and that you can't do on when you're on a flight. So rental cars, it's important. I always, always, always take photos or video of the perimeter of the car and the interior when you pick it up. And I always do it when I return the car. I just heard of an incident where a lady who doesn't own any pets, then she returned her rental car and they charged her a pet cleaning fee because of hair in the rental car. Well, obviously it was before she rented the car. But now I'm now doing the interior photos too, so that when you return the car, they don't say, "Oh, this is how you returned it," because that can happen. The beauty of doing it with your iPhone is it's both location and time stamped. So I always do it when I pick it up, because that'll show what little dents and nicks were on it. And I always do it when I drop it off. And by the way, this is not a bad thing to do if you take your car in for service. So they can't say, "Oh no, that dent didn't happen in our parking lot." So really, really important. When you travel, Uber is in a lot of countries. It works very, very well. I got to tell you though, Uber and Lyft are short on drivers. So for instance, in Reno when I landed, it was cheaper to take a taxi to the U-Haul than it was to take Uber. Because Uber is all their pricing is demand based. In other words, if they don't have a lot of drivers, the price goes up. So be conscious of that. I shop Uber and Lyft, and then at this point I walked out to the cabbie and I asked how much it would cost. Uber had it at $22 to get me over to the U-Haul place. I asked the lady cab driver that was right there. She says, "Yeah, it's about $20. Hey, when we ended up doing it, it only cost $13 on a regular cab." So don't forget cabs. I used to only do Uber and Lyft, but just be ready, check and see what it is, Uber and Lyft. And Lyft isn't in as many of the other countries, but Uber does have some presence in other countries. But because of driver availability and stuff, it hasn't been as good as it was. Absolutely the best thing you can get if you're traveling in national parks, Canada or the US and Hawaii, it is my go-to. I absolutely love this. Every park I go to, if it's got a gypsy guide for it, I'll spend the $4 to $9 it is, and then I'm getting a narrated tour as I go along. And I've been going to Yosemite since I was a kid. Al was with me. We went, and Ken Henry, we went to Yosemite a year and a half ago for the natural firefall, and I turned him on then this thing, and it told me stuff about Yosemite that I didn't know. So you don't have to have cell reception. It downloads it to your phone ahead of time, and then it does know your GPS location. So as you're going somewhere, it knows which direction you're going and will give you the correct directions. And it'll be little things like, right around this next bend, if there's no car in this little turnout, go ahead and pull in there, and it's a little 8th-mile hike down, and you'll get this wonderful view, and it's awesome. Absolutely awesome. Don't you agree, Al? Yeah. So he was on mute, but he was thumbs up in it. So, and if you have an area where there's not scenic things, it'll give you the history of the area or the geology and things like that. So these are some of the many tours they have. Also, if you're going to a certain area, they have it as a combination. And those of you that have used Gypsy Guide in the past, they've done it different now. You used to buy the one for, say, Yosemite. You'd buy the one. They were separate apps. They now have one main Gypsy Guide app, and that's the repository of all of your existing ones, and then you buy them in there. But always look for a bundle, too. For instance, when I went up and did the Canadian Rockies, it had 4 tours locked into one. You can do Bryce and Zion together instead of just Bryce and Zion and things like that. But oh my God, it's just the best. Absolutely the best. Here's a quick little audio of it.
Gypsy Guide driving tour apps are perfect for travelers who want all the benefits of a guided tour, but prefer the freedom to drive yourself. The audio tours are filled with local stories, tips, and directions about the interesting places ahead, so you won't miss a thing. Just download the tour apps over Wi-Fi before you go. While you drive, there's no need to have a cellular, data, or Wi-Fi connection. Easy and fun. It's just like having a tour guide in your car.
And that's the guy that narrates it, and that's how he speaks, and it's wonderful. What a year and a half ago, 2.5 years ago, when I did Glacier National Park and then the Icefields Parkway. Well, in Glacier National Park, the big thing is the road to the sun. So since Ken and I are both photographers, the first day we were there, we did the road to the sun with the Gypsy Guide, and it told us where to go. So we basically, that was our reconnaissance mission, and that determined, we used that first day and then said, okay, here's the places we want to come back to at certain times because of the lighting and things like that. It's just a great tool. There's another one, Al, you might link it. It's HEARHERE, Here. And it's an app for the phone, but it's a subscription. And it's as you're driving along, it will tell you about landmarks nearby or history. Like if you're in the foothills, it'll tell you about the gold rush and things like that. And it will also, by the way, I should say, both of these play through your car Bluetooth speakers. So as you're going along, it will do that for you, and it's just wonderful. But the Here is a subscription, and you only need to activate the subscription when you're going on the trips. But it is wonderful as you go across. Kevin Costner is one of the main guys that was behind that, and I only heard about it because an old business acquaintance told me about it because he knew I traveled a lot, and it's really pretty cool. But it's more not a tour, it's more as you're driving along, it'll pop up and say, oh, here's some information about this place. So one of the nice quotes here, and at the end of the day, your feet should be dirty, your hair messy, and your eyes sparkling. And that way you really know you've had a good day. And boy, I'll tell you, it was that way during the Great Race thing. We were beat every night. So some tech end of it. This is amazing, and it's one of the first apps that ever came out on the iPhone, and it's Google Translate. So currently though, Siri will do translation for you, but for Siri to work, well, Siri will work even if you don't have a cell connection, but I still gravitate to Google Translate, and Google Translate has about 80 languages, and it now has what's called a conversation mode. So you can speak in one direction and it waits, and if the person you're talking to speaks in their language and you've signified that, it will speak back to you in the other, and it'll give you an ongoing conversation. And it's wonderful, and it's the true beauty of leveraging your tech. Now, with Google Translate, about 80 of the, well, the majority of the 80 languages are able to be downloaded, so you don't have to have a cellular connection when you're traveling. That way it's downloaded and it's stored on your device back and forth. The same thing can be done with the Google Maps for your phone. You can download the area that you're in. But this is part of Google Maps. It's a company they acquired that's called WordLens. And if you watch here, you'll see what happens. It holds it up in Translate, and that was Russian to English. And there it says what that says. So we'll do that again. Come on. Now remember, normally you would be, if you were asking it to translate verbally, you would be English to Russian because you would say it in English and it would speak it in Russian for you. But in this case, you're reading a Russian sign, so you hit the little thing and flip it back the other way. Google Translate is absolutely fantastic. It's a free app, and there are some other translate apps out there, but I find it to be quite good. But now Siri does it for you also. I think with the new, in iOS 15, there's some things where it will read signs, but for the most part, it's the easiest. So what do you need for tech? You know, I'm not a big fan of selfie sticks, except selfie sticks can be effective for shooting up over a crowd and things like that. You know, you can get GoPros or ones that are like GoPros and do the video all the time. Adapters, you know, that's a big deal, are these adapters. And Roy had a question earlier about adapter, you know, the voltage adapters. So there's two things. There's adapters and there's converters. So the majority of the things you have, especially if it's a tech product, you look at the little power brick that you have that plugs into the wall, anything you get from Apple, most of the Anchor devices, all of those will be where it says it's 120 and 240, both, which means all you have to do is adapt the plug. In other words, the plug style is what you need to change. And that's all these little ones that you get that are just plug adapters. The problem runs into if it's a thing that doesn't have a little transformer, because what that does, it's taking AC current and making it DC. But a hairdryer, for instance, hairdryers are problematic because they are only 110 or 120 voltage for the US, and you need to get a converter, and those converters actually have to convert the voltage. They're more expensive, and to handle something like a hairdryer, they have to be very robust. But the problem, what'll happen is you try to use that hairdryer and you'll blow the circuits, as happened to me one time in Italy. I forget what it was. It might have been a hairdryer back in the days I blow dried my hair. And I was in my 20s, and I knocked out the electricity for the entire floor at 5 a.m. And it was just because I converted the plug, but I didn't actually have a converter that did it. But for the most, and that won't usually happen on small devices. So you can read your device, and on it it'll say input. It'll say 120 / and then it'll say 204 or 208 or 240. And most of those devices, all you do is you just plug your little US type plug into one of these adapters, and all you're doing is changing the plug type. Your device will be just fine that way. But if it's something like a hairdryer, I can't think of other things, but you know, you can check on that and see. It's the difference between a converter. And the converters also do burn out. So what I do when I travel, because you know me, I have a lot of tech stuff, I get one of these Anchor devices that has multiple outlets on it. But what I also do is I have a small power strip. Now, you don't want to travel with a surge protector, because a surge protector that's a 110, if you plug it into the 240, even if you put the prong in, it's going to make the surge protector pop and you won't get electricity. So I just get a straight little electrical plug. I change my plug to the European one. I plug it into the wall, and now I can plug the regular US plugs into what I've got. I don't have to have 3 different adapters. I have one adapter to a little thing, but just make sure it doesn't have a surge protector, because the surge protector will pop off. And then do I have a photo of the Anchor? Yeah, so like here on the lower left, this is an Anchor device, and it's good for 220. So what I do is I just convert the plug on the end, and then it has all my USB things on it. The rest of these things going around here, this is one device. Sleeping mask if you need it for the plane. Always, like I said, a poncho or just a packable rain gear. I really, really, really believe in noise canceling headphones. If you have to sleep at an airport for a while or be in an airport or on the plane, I use noise canceling headphones. I also travel with the new noise canceling AirPods. The problem with the AirPods is they're only good for 5 hours, where most of these other headsets are good for 12 to 14, and you can charge them while you're doing it. So that's to me a big deal, because it's just so peaceful to have that being blanked out. Roy, question or comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, question. I know you like Anchor. I have a Best Tech converter that I got a few years ago. I presume it's still good.
Yeah, I don't know that Anchor even makes a converter. Anchor makes the charging products, but if it's worked for you, I would say good. But so is it just a plug adapter, or is it a voltage converter?
Converter. It says adapter and converter. It's a 220.
Okay. So what I would recommend is also take just the little adapter, because that way you have it in case that fails.
Yeah, I've got the converter and the adapters for.
Yeah. So the adapters are just pass through, and they have many different types of them. And you just want to, look on Amazon and see what the good reviews are and things like that. But yeah, the converter can fail, and then it's no good even as an adapter. So an adapter, that's the one. It has less complex electronics. In fact, it has no complex electronics. So good question. There's the neck thing I do. I also carry one, because I'm notorious for getting my bag pretty close to weight. I'm getting much better at packing, but I'm always concerned, so I take one of these with me so I can pick up my suitcase and how much it weighs. And I'll give you a little tip. If you're close or over, you really want to know, because when I'm over, I have a little technique. When I set my bag on the tray, I can lift up on the edge of my suitcase with my foot, and the person at the ticket counter can't see that. So just a little, not that I would encourage anyone to ever do that. But what I do is I have one that I got, and they're very hard to find now, but I'm always worried about this battery failing on me or emptying. So what I do is I have one where I shake it back and forth, and that charges it, and then it's good to be able to weigh a couple suitcases, and then it goes back again. So, and be very cognizant, check with your airlines. Some of the very low-cost airlines, they are very strict on weights for not just your check bags, your carry-on and your personal, and then some of them do different size of your carry-ons and things like that. So be very, very careful with that. And Al, I should ask, are you monitoring if there's any questions in chat too?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I figured you were. I just wanted to be sure. So noise canceling headphones. The other thing is, if you're traveling with someone else and you've downloaded your movie from Netflix onto your iPad, well, you're not going to have the speaker on, because first of all, you won't hear it, and it's also very rude and annoying to the other people. But if you just get one of these little headphone splitters, you put that in the headphone jack of the iPad, and then both of you can use your little earbuds, and you can both be watching the same movie. And so that's a good little thing to have. They're really, really cheap. The other thing is, this is a Joby Gorilla Pod, And that's just a wonderful thing to take. It helps for you to be able to take pictures of yourself if you're in a group and things like that. But also it wraps around. I've used it on the railing of a cruise boat to hold my phone and different things like that. They're very, very good and very functional. So that works well. I should mention, if you're doing a selfie or a group shot, if you have an Apple Watch, it's very convenient to take your use the camera app on your Apple Watch, and you can take pictures remotely that way, rather than having to do the 10-second thing where you jump back around and you never make it back in time and things like that. And I will give you one tip that I will neither confirm or deny that I've ever done, but in some of these nice cathedrals and stuff, they don't want you to take video or pictures because they want to sell you the postcard. And you don't have a flash on, so it's not anything to do with that. But if you have a shirt pocket and you put your iPhone in your pocket with the camera facing out, and then you take your Apple Watch, you can snap pictures wherever your shirt pocket is pointing. Although in Peru, the guy came up and he pointed to my watch, and what it does, it previews it on the watch, and he busted me. So he didn't kick me out or anything, but I did it. I said, okay, it was fine. But not that anyone would ever do that. The other thing is external batteries are huge. It's a big deal. Also, if you're on a long flight, don't forget you may need to charge your Apple Watch. What I do primarily, if I know I'm on a long flight, I do have a little pocket Apple Watch charger, but what you can do on a long flight, you're probably not going to use your watch. So turn your watch off to save the battery on your watch, because I've had some 17-hour days. I think my longest day of travel was 30-something hours, and that just made it. The bigger adapter, I like these Anchor adapters. You want to make sure you have one that has higher amperage. If you're traveling and you're taking an iPhone and an iPad, take only your iPad charger, because your iPhone charger will not charge your iPad, and the iPad charger will charge your phone twice as fast. So you're going to look for the amperage on those, and especially now that we're getting to USB-C and things like that. Bev, go ahead and ask your question or comment.
A simple question. Apple Watch, the only way I would know to turn it off is to take it off my wrist. Is there another way?
That doesn't turn it off.
Oh, okay. Then how do I turn it off?
The oval button, you press and hold it, and then when it comes up, don't keep holding it. It comes up and says power off, medical ID, or emergency. Do not continue to hold it just hold it until the screen comes up that says slide to power off. If you continue to hold it, it will call 911.
Not sure I understand.
Okay. So that's what you would do, and that just helps. The life, I don't know, has anybody had trouble with the latest update with their Apple Watch not having good battery life? Anybody? Well, I couldn't get through the day, so I finally just did a complete reset on my Apple Watch, wiped it out, and then it's now good.
And how does one do a reset?
Al will be posting a link on how you do a complete erase. You go to the gray gear in settings and say erase. It's an erase, and you erase the watch completely. And then when you fire it back up, you go to your phone and it says, "Oh, do you want to recover it from your last backup?" Because it backs it up to the phone. But I would recommend it because it was terrible.
Yeah.
And by the way, I know that I've had issues on my iPhone in the latest update. If my battery life sucks and my phone gets hot if I'm doing the podcast app. So when you're done with the podcast app, force quit it if you're having battery life or heat issues with your phone. Hopefully they'll fix it. And Sir Richard Burton, the gladdest moment in human life, methinks, is a departure into unknown lands. And I rationalize, and my excuse for travel, I use photography as my excuse for travel. And I don't even do anything with my photos or anything else, but it makes me get out there. It makes me get up early. It makes me do different things like that. So find a reason. And for me, I love exploring new places, but I'm really, really, really love learning and just seeing different cultures and the way things are around the world. In fact, it was true in this trip that I just took on the Great Race. My gosh, we were in Oklahoma, Arkansas, we were in Kentucky, and it's just different and nice, and it's really neat. So immerse yourself in your travel. Let the tools do the travel. Let the tools help you travel, and it helps you from being apprehensive. And I really encourage you to have a cellular plan that you can use overseas and stuff, because it really makes it a lot easier. We kind of went through most of this. This is just what these different apps look like. I haven't mentioned Lonely Planet. It's also a very good thing. There's a currency converter is one currency, but I should tell you that Siri will now do currency transactions for you, or not transactions, currency conversions. You just ask Siri the question and it will do it for you. This was Chinese proverb. Don't listen to what they say, go see. And boy, that's so true. Just go out and see it, and it doesn't have to be awe-inspiring, but get down close. Just find the little stuff. It's like when I used to dive a lot. People would go and they say they didn't see anything, but you can just kind of concentrate in one small little area. Take your time, enjoy the different things. Like there might be patterns in this wall of the Great Wall and stuff. It's amazing. Credit cards, I'm going to go through fairly quickly because this is kind of changed. I do want you to make note of this. Always make sure you have room on your phone when you get there. Take a picture of your passport and your driver's license. I don't take pictures of my credit cards and stuff because I have those stored in my Apple Wallet. I always take a picture of my itinerary, and I put that in my notes program so I can always access it. The hotel addresses and phone numbers, again, I keep most of the stuff in the notes application now, because if my phone's lost or stolen, at least I have my iPad and all of that. But I do paper copies of these. Don't forget to mark where your airport parking spot is. When I used to travel very often, I couldn't remember where I parked the last time. And then the other thing is, if you're traveling by car, if it's your car or rental car, always take a picture of your license plate, because when you check into hotels, a lot of time they ask for it. Another tip is, like for instance, I have pills and supplements and vitamins I take in the morning and in the evening. So I have my pill organizer for day and night, and I do all those before I go, but it'd be really bad if it opened up in my bag. So I wrap it in plastic, in either saran wrap, or, believe it or not, the little plastic bag that they have in the hotels that's for feminine products, actually works just great for most of those pill dispensers. Slides right in. And always take extra plastic bags. You never know what you need to separate from something else. I keep some of my electronics gear just in Ziploc bags, so you have it. But take extras. You may decide to go down to the hot tub one night and you're checking out the next morning. Well, you just don't want that sitting in there with all your other luggage and stuff. So that's pretty good. But again, there are different cards that have different bonuses. It's changed from what I have there. American Express, even if you're not, you don't have to have their platinum, but they have a global assistance hotline that's quite good. That's a concierge. A lot of times your credit card company will have something similar to that. We'll kind of pass through this. Most of the airline credit cards are not the way to go anymore. You're better off getting some of the other cards that can go on any airline. Roy, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, I learned to use my travel visa card, so I don't get fees for paying in Europe. Does a Sapphire handle foreign currency so that you don't get charged?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's twofold. And so before we embark on that, let's look at, there's ATM debit cards and there's credit cards. and I'm going to speak to both of them. The credit card, you check with your credit card company. Most of the credit card companies will have no foreign transaction fees, which means they don't surcharge it. So you can use your credit card, and it's also a good idea to let your credit card company know you can do it online, that you're going to different countries, because you don't want them to pop up and say, oh my gosh, why is he there, and things, and not be able to do charges. So you want to tell them in advance, but you check with your credit card company and find out if they have no foreign transaction fees. And most of the travel cards do have that. And the other thing you should do is, if you're presented, they have Apple Pay, they do all these other places in most of the other countries. They usually bring the reader right to you. If you have a choice with a credit card to either pay in the local currency or pay in US dollars, always choose the local currency. And the reason is, whoever that credit card transaction, that's a company that clears that, they may charge you more to convert it to US dollars than you would. If you have a good credit card from the US and you say to do it in local currency, they will do, like for instance, Chase or Citi or American Express. They get what's called banker's buyer's rate. So in other words, they get to transact that at a wholesale level, and they don't surcharge you on that. So you're going to get a much better conversion. These local credit card processors could convert it whatever rate they want. So that's the way to do it. So if given the choice, always choose the local currency, and you'll come out ahead in your trend. You will be at a very favorable rate. The other thing applies to debit cards. So I travel, I rarely use debit cards, but anytime I use a debit card, if I'm traveling internationally, I have one on my Schwab account, and I make sure there's money in that account. I only do enough for when I'm going to travel, so if anything happens. But I put it in my Schwab account because there's no foreign transaction fee, and they will reimburse me any ATM charges. And ATM charges in other countries can be tens of dollars or be a percentage. It can be very expensive, and they will immediately take that right off the top of my bill. And you just have to have a Schwab account to do that. I know there's probably a couple others on debits that might allow it. Again, that's the difference is, when you go to an ATM to get local currency, always transact it in the local currency, not in US dollars. And that's if you're drawing money out. And again, you have to tell them you're visiting these other countries, because they just don't want it to be a fraudulent transaction. So in both cases, you always use the foreign currency, not US. But again, I recommend the Schwab card, and you don't have to have a lot of money in Schwab or anything like that, but it's very, very good, and they do reimburse it. Did that answer your question, Roy, enough?
Yeah, I guess specifically on that Sapphire, because you said most cards you don't get the extra charge, the surcharge. Most of mine I do. That's why I have this one travel card, but it's a Visa and doesn't have all the bells and whistles.
Sapphire does not. What you're looking for is, it'll say no foreign transaction fee.
Okay, thank you.
That's the key words you want to look for. I really believe in T-Mobile traveling internationally. It is the best. The other thing you can do, I don't know if you're aware, but ever since the iPhone 10, the phones are able to have what's called a dual SIM. So what I do on my phone is, since I buy mine, I'm on the upgrade plan from Apple, I have my local T-Mobile in as an electronic SIM. So it's an eSIM inside the phone. So if I'm in Morocco and I don't have good T-Mobile coverage, I can buy a local SIM card and put it in my phone, and then my phone has both numbers, and I can choose to make calls one way or the other. So Wi-Fi calling is usually quite good. The most important thing is always check with your carrier before you go and see what their plans are. I know T-Mobile is very, very good, but things change. And I get to go to 210 countries, so I don't have to worry about an unlocked phone. And I got to tell you, this is all about travel and traveling and using your tools. If you can't use Google, if you can't use Google Maps, if you can't search to see if where your next hotel is and things like that. Why hamstring yourself? You're spending all this money to fly there. You're spending all this money on hotels. Don't cheap out and don't and hamstring yourself by not having a connection. It's very important. But within those countries, you can get connections too. And again, there might be Yelp might have this wonderful restaurant around the corner that everybody knows about, but you'll never know about it. So it's you're investing in this, and it makes better memories. So I just think if you prepare right, it should work well. The goal is to die with memories, not dreams. And I really believe that. And I want to have as many memories as I can. And, that's why have three trips in the books. So I'm going to move. This was quick. This was nothing. That's for the other group. So let me go into, I'm going to dig into 3 Google products that I really, really enjoy. So if you look at the top here, anytime I plan travel, I use my Gmail address. And if you want to just develop a Gmail address that you use just for travel, if you're worried about Gmail and all that, because here's what happens. I use my Gmail address for every hotel reservation, for every air reservation, and I make sure I'm logged into my account when I'm searching Google Flights and things, because look at this. I did not enter any of this information, and it's showing me that it knows I was looking at Casablanca, or my flight from here, and I've been searching it on Google Flights. So when I do this, it'll show me, and look at this. I didn't enter this. There are my flights that it automatically got from my Google email, and it's showing me my itinerary. Then if I want to discover Casablanca and things like that. So how you find this is your google.com/travel, and it comes up. Now, here's I'm going San Francisco to Lisbon to Geneva. So here it is. Here's my flights, and I didn't do anything to put this in there. Boom. It's all right there. And even my hotel reservations are right there. I made those using my Gmail address. This is free, and it's wonderful. So google.com/travel. And you'd be surprised. If you're in there, you'll probably see what it is. Oh, I didn't even notice this. It shows I have 4 flights, and then here's the 2 hotels. I have another couple of hotels to book there. It'll automatically show up. So the other thing is, I just, going back, I was just looking at my email earlier, and there was a flight to one of these ones I subscribed to Toulouse. Oh, here it is. San Francisco to Toulouse. Toulouse is in France. $289. As Clark Howard says, don't figure out where you're going to go. Figure out what's on sale and go there. Because to fly round trip from San Francisco to Toulouse and back, $289. And this doesn't mean like next week. It's through travel of March of 22. So what I did is, for this demonstration, again, this is one of the ones I subscribed to, I put Toulouse in. I went to maps.google.com. So in maps.google.com, right here, I put in Toulouse. So this is Toulouse right here. So this shows me where it is. I can zoom out and see where France is. But let's say I just want to kind of get an idea on what hotels are like around there. If I click here, it now will give me a list of hotels, and I can sort and check those hotels. And then I can fill in my dates. Let's say I'm going, I've been recently doing that. I'm going to give it another date in the future. We'll say February 15th to the 24th. Now it updates all these prices by those dates. And I can hover over this if, there's the airport. So there's by the airport. Well, I click on that, then I click on that, it shows up over here. It shows me what the reviews are for it. This one, it doesn't say. It usually say if it's a 2-star, 3-star, 4-star hotel. And look, there's the websites right to it, etc. And I can look at all that, or I can go straight to the website. And it does have other booking type things. So maps.google.com is fantastic. And it's great for when I'm looking for what to do. For instance, I'm going to have to book in Casablanca. I'm going to have to book a hotel near the airport so I can see what's by the airport and get a thing. I don't usually use the booking things here. I usually click on the link. I go to the hotel's website. I look for stuff and see what it is. But the other big thing, and this is what I'm going to spend the remaining time on and leave some Q&A time at the end, is my favorite tool. And I've been on this constantly lately, is google.com/flights. This is whether it be domestic. I will point out they don't do Southwest because Southwest doesn't interact with that. So I don't know if those of you most of us are old enough to remember the carbon tickets we used to get, where the travel agent would write it out and it would have red carbon and you get multiple copies and stuff like that. Well, that's all part of IATA. You know, the travel agents used to have this computer back before everybody had computers. And you would go to these different things. Well, the travel agents were always into this big database. And like I know that American Airline, it was called Sabre, was theirs, and some other ones. So what happened is years ago, Google bought the data company, the IATA, that all the travel agents used. And they've been a very good steward of that information. But what they've done is they've created this Google trip or Google Flights. And I'll just give you an example. Let's say we're going to go from Sacramento to, well, actually, let's say here, since I've been doing it, I'll do Casablanca. So I know that, well, actually, we can do it. Okay, so Casablanca. So I'm going to go to Casablanca. I'm just going to pick a date here. I don't really care. Oh, by the way, you'll notice as I pick the dates, it shows me the different prices. So, would I want to come back on the 29th, or do I want it for about half price to come back on the 30th? So if I click the 30th, so that's there, and I'll hit done. So now it's going to give me a grid, but before I dig down into the grid, I want to do some other things here. I can change it to business class if I want, and now it'll give me business class prices. And then when you click this, it discloses more about it. But see, this says, well, this one leg would be economy, but then this leg is business class. So that's called a mixed cabin. But you can, and then the beauty of it is, it tells me to go to Casablanca. It's 16 hours and 40 minutes. That's the shortest flight in a reasonable price. Let's go back to economy. So it's it's not too bad, because it's only twice as much to go business class. It's only 800 more. So for these long flights. So now I look here, now it's sorted by price, and you can see here that there's some pretty long trips. So if I chose this one, it's 16 hours and 40 minutes. Now if I click this little disclosure chevron, it says from Sacramento to San Francisco, that's a 50-minute flight. I've got a 1 hour and 5-minute layover. Then I fly to Montreal. That's a 5-hour and 27-minute flight. I have a 2-hour layover in Montreal. Then I fly from Montreal to Casablanca. It's an overnight. That's what the +1 indicates. And it's a 7-hour flight. So I arrive at 7:10 in the morning. So for me, I'd say, well, that's an overnight flight. Rather than being in that cramped seat, possibly you'd try to look at what the business price would be. The other thing is, you want to look at this. It says it's often delayed by 30 minutes. Well, that's a concern, not when it's the last flight. It'd be a concern if you had a really tight connection where you only have an hour and 5-minute layover. So you look at all that. Now, the other thing you'll notice here, this is a United flight, but it's operated by United, but this is an Air Canada flight. So I can buy this ticket through United because they interact with each other. And I could also buy the same ticket through Air Canada, and you can figure out which way you want to do that. Now, the nice thing is, we talked about Seat Guru earlier. Let's give an example here. Here, this is this flight here, this Casablanca AC 70. So I'm going to go up and get seatguru.com. Seatguru.com, and it was a United, well, no, it was an Air Canada flight. And I'll just pick a date, it doesn't really matter. And it was flight 70 or 71. So now it shows me, oh, okay, so that's the flight. Now I click here and it says view map. And this is the way the seats are on that particular plane. So in business class, it says they're open suites, they call it. These are the, and then look at here, it says, well, this one is, it's a yellow. So you might, the proximity to the lavatory and the galley, excuse me, may be bothersome. So if I scroll down here and say this one, it's lie flat, but the and it may be missing a window, so that wouldn't be there. So then here's the premium economy. It tells you about the different seats. These aren't good because there's limited. You can't store stuff under the seat in front. These are good ones because it has extra leg room, but there's no floor storage during takeoff. And so you can kind of see this is Seat Guru. People put in their own comments about different seats over here also. You can also check if it's got plugs, if you have AC power. So in this one, in economy, there are power plugs. On long flights, that might be important. So Seat Guru is wonderful. It also tells you the pitch and the width of the seats. So typically, a lot of planes only have a 17-inch width of the seat. And I know some of them are down to 30 inches of what they call pitch. That's your knee room or leg room. So Seat Guru is wonderful. And I will get rid of that. That's in the thing. Oh, and it always pops up this ad page. So getting back to Google Flights here, I can do different things. I can say, okay, I only want to make so many stops. Well, in this case, you probably couldn't get to Casablanca with few stops. I can choose, it says select all airlines, or let's say I just want to go on Star Alliance, which are certain airlines. So now it changed it. So now it's only the United, it's not showing some of those others. You have that option. I'm going to unselect that and say select all airlines. There we go. Bags. So if you have a carry-on bag, some of the ones restrict that. You can do the price, you can do the times, you can do connecting airports. But the really neat thing is, let's pull up the date grid. So this says, oh yeah, well, okay, I could fly. Let's see, I depart on Monday, August 16th and come back on the 30th. Okay, well, that's pretty good. Oh man, if I go the day before, it's a lot more, and different things like that. So you can see the date grid is very, very good. And it does it for both economy and for regular. The price graph, this will show you over time what that particular flight pricing has been. The other thing is you can set up an alert. If you don't need to make this reservation for 2 or 3 months, you can have it it'll track prices right here, and it will alert you to the prices and send it to you by email. So it's very, very useful. It's a huge tool. And another feature I want to show you now. So right now we're at 881 we're 1180 on ours. I don't know this Transavia airline, so that's a little suspect. But I can say I'm going to Casablanca, but I might want to go out of SMF. So I put SMF and put a comma. And then I say, well, let's check SFO, because if it's cheap enough, it might be worth getting a hotel room the night before down there. Or I also check LAX, because many times on Southwest, you could fly cheaply to LA for what it costs to get a hotel in San Francisco. I also, if I'm going to Asia, I always check Seattle, and sometimes I'll throw in just an Oakland also. So it allows you to put 5 airports in. Is it allowing me to do one more? Let's check. It does sometimes let you do more than 5. Usually it's only 5. So we will do SJC, San Jose also, because to Asia there. Now, yeah, sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 7. I don't know why. Recently it's only let me do 5. So now when I do that, I say, okay, now it's checking all the airports that I listed, and it says, oh, I can go Air France and Delta from LAX for $869. And this other one from Sacramento is still there. And that's okay. I mean, that's weird. I don't, but look, that's a 36-hour flight. So then I've got down here, here's one from LAX. This is in fact one that I looked at that's quite good. From LAX to Casablanca, it's a 15-hour flight. See, this one, it's 36 hours. Let's look at that. So it's 12-hour layover in Atlanta, 8-hour layover in Amsterdam. That's tough. What I'm doing, like for my trip to Switzerland to go skiing, on the way back, I had a long layover for 12. It was like 12 hours in Lisbon. So what I actually did is I extended it for 3 days. On my way back, I'm for the same price staying in Lisbon for 3 nights and get to go and tour Lisbon in Portugal on the way back. I'll keep my skis at the hotel, and I won't need them in Lisbon. So those other things, and you can do it for both your departing and your arriving airport. I could put multiple airports. Let's say, New York, you have different airports. In fact, that'd be a good example. Let's go New York. So now you'll notice my choice on New York is all of New York, which includes these 3 airports, or do I want to just do JFK or just do LaGuardia? If I put New York, it is checking for all 3 airports. And for some reason there, Spirit Airline, yeah. So you'll notice Spirit Airline doesn't let you take any bags. Spirit's kind of tough. So we'll go real quick here. We're just going to book this LAX to JFK. We're going to go one way, and then I'll pick a return trip from LAX to JFK for $317. So now I've got the trip. I can book it through Google. I can book it with American. I usually just call the airline, but you'll notice here, then it gives me the baggage requirements. So on this flight in economy, it's 1 free carry-on, and I have to pay $60 for the first checked bag. And I always recommend that you go check that with the airline. And this says, wow, this is pretty low for the economy flight. Prices are $147 cheaper than usual. So that's Google Flights, which is just a wonderful, wonderful tool. And again, you can track prices, have it alert you. You can do all kinds of criteria. Any questions on any of the Google things I just talked about? Feel free to raise your hand or unmute your mic. Go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, just wondering, since once you get, that's great for flights, but once you get to the city or the destination, and many European and other parts of the world have quite advanced train travel.
I'm so glad you asked.
Okay.
And I forgot, I think it might be in my links, but if not, I'm going to have Al put it in, and I'll open a new window here. It's called Rome to Rio. Rome to Rio, the number 2, Rio. So let's say, here's an example. So I'm landing in Geneva, and I need to go to Zermatt. No. Zermatt. And we'll say anytime. It doesn't matter. I could put the dates in. But if I go search, it shows me how to get there by train, how to get there by bus and train, drive, approximately how much it would cost driving, not necessarily including rental, and different things. Rome to Rio is, and you notice they do this now with the COVID thing on here too. Rome, the number 2, Rio.com. Does that answer your question, Randy? Great question, and I need to make a note to include that in my presentation because it's awesome. And you can even do airfares through here too, but in this case, it's great. And so what I did is for this, I've determined that, and by the way, like in Europe, the majority of the time, most of the big airports in Europe, one level is the airplanes, the next level is pedestrian, the next level is cars, the next level is trains, the next level is buses, etc. So they're smart. They make their airports and things transportation hubs. And in Geneva, because I'm arriving late at night and then the train's not till the next morning, so I'm getting an airport right at the airport, a hotel right at the airport, so that I can just go right on to the train because it leaves from the airport. It can leave from town too, but it's better to leave from the airport. Great. Bertie, go ahead.
Hi, Ken. I wanted to bounce back to your comment about having a 12-hour layover in Portugal, so you elected to stay 3 days instead.
Correct.
This is interesting. When you are signing up for your air flight, how do you do that? Are you booking 2 different flights? Can you explain that, please?
You bet. So let's go back to Google Flights here, because there's one way to do it there. And if I go back to Google Flights and I go here, and there's a thing, instead of round trip, I can do round trip one way or multi-city.
Oh.
So in this case, you can make a multi-city. The problem is it doesn't always come out right. So what it was is I had found, and in one of the emails that I get about different airfares, TAP, Portugal Airline, TAP, was having a special deal. So I went through this, I found out if it would work, and then I saw that layover. So then I went directly to the TAP site, and most carriers like Singapore Airlines will let you lay over in Singapore for up to 3 days with no additional charge. They treat it just like an ongoing flight because they want you to visit their cities and things like that. So many of the airports will have that. I lucked out one time in Seoul, Korea. If you guys ever have a layover in Seoul, Korea, it was absolutely incredible. They have free tours. I took a 4-hour tour and a 2-hour tour from the airport on a Mercedes bus with a tour guide, and it was all free. It was the local airport, and it was I went to a Buddhist enclave that was from the 400s, and it was just free. It was just absolutely wonderful. So you research that stuff ahead of time. And believe it or not, in that case, it was because my flight was delayed. I had researched when I was booked with a tour group, I wanted to spend an extra night in Seoul just to do something like this, and it was over $2,000. Well, I was overjoyed when I found out that morning that my flight was delayed 3 hours leaving Vietnam, because that meant I was going to miss my connection, and they put me up for a hotel for free, and I got the free tours. So be ready, research it, and it's wonderful. But I went directly to the airline because I knew it was TAP Portugal, so I knew Lisbon would be they might be able to do it, and yes, they give you free stopovers. So again, check the airline, and again, it's kind of like, in the U.S., Dallas-Fort Worth is American's hub, so that's like Lisbon, of course, is the big hub for TAP. So, Air France does it. Swiss Air does it in Geneva, places like that. So always look for things like that. I check the schedule out with them, and then I go directly to the website and try book it. But I do my schedule here because, like, for instance, this trip that I'm doing from Casablanca and then to Jordan, I have to fly from Morocco to Jordan, and that's really weird, and there's connections, but I had to make sure that I've got enough time on those flights to connect up. So I always build a spreadsheet with my dates to make sure I have hotels and things like that. To me, the problem solving of this is intriguing, and I love it almost as much as the travel.
And Ken, just a question, TAP, is that affiliated with a U.S. carrier?
Well, yeah, so my TAP, no, because I'm flying out of LAX, I think. Yeah, I'd have to check. But so like in the case, to my Casablanca trip, so I'm booking it through United, but my flight to Chicago, my flight to Chicago is on United, then it's Air Canada after that. So I could buy the tickets through Air Canada, or I could get the tickets through United. But the weird thing was, if I got my tickets through Air Canada, I got business class. It wouldn't have been business class from here to Chicago, but when I did it on United, it was.
Okay, I'm just thinking how you link to TAP. If you,
TAP, I did well in here in it's actually round trip. I did it. I do Sacramento? Anyway, I'll just do it to Geneva. And then there's Lufthansa. Yeah, TAP is not showing up now. I might have been doing because I have all these LAXs. Anyway, it was a deal they had, so I can tell it to just search TAP. Like here, let's do that. I'll turn that off and let's go down to TAP Air Portugal. And sure enough, so it'll interline with JetBlue.
thank you.
So that's not what I'm doing though. Mine was a little different. So, and then be careful. And again, like the other thing is do Seat Guru, because a lot of times you'll be on these little Embraer flights and stuff like that. And I always look because on some of those small planes, they'll have one row on one side and two on the other. And if I use Seat Guru, I can usually see where the seats are and choose the seats.
That's a good point.
And another thing some airlines do, and this worked for me on the way back from Peru. We stopped over in Panama. We were on Copa, which is Panamanian airline, and you could bid for a business class seat. So it was a super long flight. I had economy, so I bid $220, and they said, you might have to bid more to get it. Well, I got a business class seat for the flight back for $220 extra. So some airlines do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bev, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not having clarity about how to use the google.com/travel and how those itineraries. I mean, I have a Gmail account and I understand putting it into the airline that, how do they communicate with you?
No. So I have on my airlines, my hotels, everything gets sent to my Gmail account.
Right.
And my Gmail account, Google goes in and gets it. The airline isn't interacting with them. All it's doing is going in and scrubbing my email and deriving that information for me without me doing anything, because it got emailed to my Gmail account. Now, if you don't want that to happen all the time, you could have it sent to your Apple account, and then you say, oh, this is a hotel reservation.
Yeah.
I'll forward that to my own Gmail account.
Yeah, I don't have an Apple account, but so I
Well,
have
or another one. I'm just saying, some people are a little concerned about the privacy. I'm not.
I'm not.
And so I let it look at what a great tool it is, because there were apps that I used to pay for to build my itineraries.
But
My
for the
itineraries right
travel,
here.
how does it show up? I mean, I guess I use
You're looking at it right here. I did nothing to make this happen. I went to google.com travel.
Okay,
and I've only recently booked this hotel. Or excuse me, I haven't booked a hotel in Casablanca because I'm doing a tour, but I am going to have to book one there. But when I look at my trip, this is the airline. This picked this up from my email that I got from United confirming my flight.
Okay, so the key is you made your airline travel thing, and then you put into your search bar google.com/travel. Then this shows up.
Correct. Without me doing a thing, but you sometimes have to be logged into your Google account. There'll be an account login.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm usually logged into that in search anyway, because it's nice to have the search history. It's a great tool.
Okay, I'll give that a try. I like that.
Yeah, I do too. Roy, go ahead.
Yeah, when you bid for the upgrade, how far ahead of your flight was that available?
It wasn't that far ahead. And so the other thing too is be real interactive when you go into like for instance, a year and a half ago, I went skiing right before COVID. I went skiing in Austria with two friends. They both had been before and they knew the place real well. We went on a carrier called Condor Airlines, which is a German-based, mostly charter, but they flew out of Sacramento. So when I got to Sacramento, well, the one guy was already in business class and the other two of us were in economy. So I go up and I always, first of all, I check with the counter. I want to see if there's maybe better seats or things like that. I'm not looking for an upgrade or anything. But I got up there and I said, and I just was curious. I said, because it was a long flight, it was an overnight flight. And I said, well, how much would it be to upgrade to business class? And she said, well, right now it's half off. I can sell it to you right now for $280. And that was from Sacramento to Frankfurt. And I go, sold.
Yeah,
that's
no kidding.
yeah. So I did. And there's normally it would have been double that. And this is a very reasonable airline. And so just because I asked at the gate, it was available. And then I went back and told the one guy that was still in economy, and he immediately went up because he said, what a deal. And I had gotten the last one is what it was. But because the reason they were discounting it is because they were trying to fill that obviously with people ahead of time. But at this point, it's the day of. They haven't filled it.
Okay.
So my Panama one, I think I was able to bid on it like 3 days in advance. And then I think they let you know 24 hours in advance or something. But they have a little chart. They say, well, the history is you might have had to, I think it said we had to bid up to like 320 or something.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what's it worth to me? I said 280. It was an overnight flight out of Panama City back to here. And God, it was great.
Yeah, we're flying business to Paris, but coming back, we're, economy. And so I might want to try to.
You might do that, and you can also check. The other thing is like, you don't need it on the short legs, but it's on the long legs. And then the other thing you should always consider is looking at is premier economy and business class if you're taking 2 bags, because some airlines would charge you a lot to have a second bag.
Yeah, we're
The other
taking.
thing I always do, because the airlines are so good at their computers are really filling these planes up because they're getting so good at it. They don't overbook as often as they used to, but if they're overbooked, you can use that to your advantage. Usually not on the way to a trip, but on the way home, you can look and say, I go up to the counter and I say, is this flight overbooked? They say, well, it might end up being that way. I say, okay, let me know. I'll be a volunteer if you want. And you get credits and different things like that. So you still have the option, even though you volunteer, you can say no. But what happens is they're desperate because they've sold those seats and they have to fill them. They can get up. I remember one time on the way back from Hawaii, I got $620 flight credit and they put me up overnight. So always ask those things. You go be real nice to them and, that just be interactive and don't be stuck in this little shell. Just think outside the box. And Randy, I think we have time for one last question because we have to let the wits go to their class coming up. So go ahead.
Sure, thanks, Ken. Real quick, the expectation for this all to work is you should be on Google as your search, not DuckDuckGo or one of the others. Or is it just pulling from email? It doesn't care what search engine you're using.
So I use DuckDuckGo for most of my searches, but they don't have Google Flights is part of Google. It's not really Google Search, it's part of Flights. Google Travel is Google Travel, and Google Maps is Google Maps. So yes, they're kind of harvesting some of that for you. But to me, they're harvesting it and I'm using it as an advantage. And for instance, when on all this research I've been doing, sometimes Google will be real good about having updates of COVID and things like that because they have enough people behind them and enough staff to get you pertinent information. And again, the only thing I can say is if you are concerned about that, establish one email account that you use just for this and let it do it. And yeah, it looks like it's reading my email. No, it's a robot going in there and seeing that United sent me a reservation and oh, okay. I'll have to save the thing. Al's computer crashed. So remind me, guys, I'm going to have to save the chat window. So I will do that right now. And in fact, somebody else could do it too because sometimes, Randy, do you know how to do that? Yeah, if you can save that too. In fact, do it now and I'll do it at the end here too. That way we have it in case and we can get it to Al for his PDF. So anyway, that's about it. And you guys, the chat, Al will get a message to that. I'm going to go to the chat and save the chat right now. And let's see here, save chat. And it should be saved. Good deal. All right, everybody. I'm going to discontinue this. Is there anybody online that's in WITS so you can pipe up? I don't know if they use the same link or a different link.
No, thanks, Ken. I appreciate all of the
Yeah,
information.
Roy, hang on. I want to have the board members hang on for a second.
Yeah, I'm doing WITS. I think.
Is it a
Cindy
different
put in
link,
different
Bev?
link. I'm not sure if it's the same one. She did put a link in the last email, but I don't remember
Would
all
you
the.
mind just checking that? Because then I'll leave this live for a little bit if so. I don't want to.
Let me see. Let me try not to.
Yeah, I can.
Um,
Let me go to the Zoom link.
or I mean, if you have the last email that came out, it
Well, I'm
had.
going to get. No, I don't get the WITS email. I don't think.
Well, it
Well,
was
no.
on the blast. It was on the blast.
Oh, it's from Bob Sacto. Okay, hang on. Let me check.
Yeah, I'm not terribly fluent on moving around
All
on my screen.
things. Okay, hang on one sec
sorry.
here. So the WITS, this one via Zoom WITS.
What?
That was great. Started watching about an hour
09,
ago.
Oh, okay.
09,
I'm gonna take a shower.
Okay.
and yeah, it's not using. Hang on, let me look. Yeah, it's the same link. So I'm going to have to discontinue this one. Can I ask that the board members, if you can do, I'll text you guys real quick and just do a real quick one there. All right, everybody. So I guess WITS will be done when we have our board meeting too. Bev, we start the board at 1 p.m. You guys are usually done by then?
We can be.
Okay, sorry, yeah.
No, I mean, it
I
depends.
didn't even think about that implication. So,
it's
and
different.
apologize to them for me going over.
So do I stay on this or do I sign out and sign in again?
Well, I'm going to have to end the meeting because somebody that will have to start that meeting.
Okay, Cindy will probably start.
Yeah,
it.
she'll click on the link.
She did say that it would not be live until 11:30, so maybe that was.
Yeah,
the
and what's
coordination.
weird though is, wait a minute here, because that's a different meeting ID. So 09 and 09, but it's a different meeting ID. But let me look here. ZFNIZ. Oh no, it's different. We can stay on. You guys, we can stay on. You have a different one, Bev.
Okay, well, thanks for all the great info.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
All right. So I can answer any other questions people want. If there are any left, anybody that's left.
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
What vendor did you use for your neck device that carries your passport?
Well, unfortunately, it's not around anymore.
Yeah, I put a link in the chat there somewhere. If you're able to salvage that, I dug up something from Amazon and it gave a list of options.
And Al, I did save chat, and Randy did too.
Great.
So let me see if I can go to it. How far back was that one?
3/4 of the way through the whole thing, I think.
Okay. After Scotty Vest.
And
Black Rapid, good. Here. So I just do neck wallet or something. Oh, here we go. National Geographic. Oh, you put some other good stuff in there, yeah. Just a neck wallet or something like that. And there's different kinds. I just like them pretty light, but I always look for one that has a pretty robust thing. Oh, here, Al got a Passport One link, so let me pull that up for everybody. Yeah, here's a great page. So, yeah, so there's different ones here. That's a link in the chat that Al put in there, and that'll be in the follow-up, so you can see different kinds. There's usually room for a passport, and then these side things, you can add other things.
Pretty versatile.
Yeah, but again, look for one that kind of has robust clips on it because I hang my phone from it too. Good question. Bertie, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Ken. Since you're hanging on for a few more minutes, a quick question. I'm planning to go to New Zealand in March,
Woohoo.
there a
Right.
favorite airplane that you have used or any travel ideas on booking a flight?
What was your first question for New Zealand?
Yes, I'm going to go there. I'm just wanting to know about air
So
travel.
I would hang up. I would subscribe to some of the ones like the Flight Deal and some of the other ones that I have in the links that you can go to kenspencer.com and download the thing, or I'll put the links in the chat. And because airline deals come up like that, in fact, when you have my email address, send me an email because I read those every day. And if I see a New Zealand one come up, I will, because those just sometimes there's some great airfares. But I would recommend you know where you know where you want to land and where you want to come back from. I would put it into flights google.com/flights and put track prices, and it will email you when prices change. So you kind of pick what you want to do, and then it'll email you when there's times, because the computers are so sophisticated that they are constantly monitoring it. That's why certain places will have some really good deals, because hardly anyone else hardly anyone else is booking that flight. So then the price will drop. One thing people say is, and it's not turning out to be true, if you use a different browser in incognito mode, they know you've been shopping, so they're trying to get. That doesn't necessarily happen for airfares. But the other thing is, if a good deal comes up, almost always you can book it and you have 24 hours to cancel without any retribution. You in fact get all your stuff back. So when I finally locked in my Sacramento to Casablanca trip, I put it in, and then I made sure everything worked on it. I took my time, and then I just let it stay on. But otherwise, you can go back and cancel it, because that's what happened. I booked the Air Canada, doing it through Air Canada, and I didn't get business class to Chicago, and I was like, oh my gosh, because that's how they had it set up, because they're buying it from United, where when I went with United and it was $20 more, I'm getting it United business class all the way. And so that was a big deal, because being able to take a second bag, but also just the comfort of the seats, especially with an overnighter or a 5-hour flight.
That's great. And then you added it to your Alliance travel insurance plan, right?
No, because I use my Sapphire, my Chase Sapphire Reserve card for all my travel, which gives me insurance in there. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to add it to it. But the Allianz is or one of the other ones, you can do it in there. But I didn't need to, because I'm covered with most of my on that card.
So the trick is to pay for your air flight with the Chase travel card.
And your hotels, because they also have really good cancellation things. So if I'm buying something, I have two cards, a Fidelity and a City Double, that give me 2% cash back. Those to me are the best deal out there. But when I travel, I always use my Sapphire card, because it gives me cancellation privileges. If there's flight interruption, all of that other stuff, if I've used that card. I also get good travel rewards for it, but I'd rather have the cash in most cases. But when I travel, it's the added benefit of the security and having evacuation and different things like that the card covers. And then most assuredly, when I rent a car for up to 30 days, I use the card for it. But I did not do it with the U-Haul, because it doesn't cover the U-Haul, but it does cover normal rental cars up to 30 days.
It sounds like a good deal, but one question here. Does it insure you for your entire trip or just for the flight?
No, it insures my hotels. I mean, that's why I book everything with it, and it covers it.
Okay, because I paid for my trip, but I left open the option of air travel, and the insurance for the trip is about $800.
Through the people you booked the trip with?
Yes, through OAT Travel.
Oh, an OAT's good. So that's fine. So in that case, you don't necessarily need to have charged it that way. But if you charge your airfare, it's good.
That's great.
So I
Okay.
book mine through, I use Gate One for this trip, and I didn't buy the insurance, but I know that this will help cover me. But they're doing a thing where if something happens because of COVID, it will you get a voucher. And I'm always going to go somewhere, so to me, it's worth that risk.
I'm hoping that New Zealand will be open. Right now it's coded red.
Yeah, and you can see, and then it's different levels with vaccinations and things like that. When are you planning on going?
March.
Yeah, so you never know, and that'll be spring again. So we'll see. Morocco is more open than Jordan right now, but Jordan's pretty good too. I was going to do an Israel and Jordan trip, but Israel is a little more locked down, and they've had some recent increases. Even though they're very good with vaccines and stuff, they're being very, very careful. And and so I decided that I would do Morocco. And Morocco, the interesting thing about Morocco is when I did my Ecuador, the Galapagos and Ecuadorian rainforest, and then the Machu Picchu trip was on my own, but I did it with Gate One when we had our little get together with the other 19 people that we were with. There was a get together dinner when everybody met everybody else, and they went around and asked people, what trips you've been on with Gate One and things like that. And the 3 different couples, unrelated to one another, all mentioned that they went on the Morocco trip, and it was their best trip of any of the trips they'd done. And some of these people have done 50, 60 trips. And Morocco wasn't even on my radar until then. And then everybody just said it was fantastic. So I looked, it's pretty open. So I did, Morocco is right under Portugal. And so I fly to Morocco, and then I fly to Jordan in place of the Israel and Jordan. So.
Sounds like a good plan, and wear good shoes when you walk into Petra.
Oh yeah, and I'm doing Petra at night was the big takeaway. Did you do Petra at night?
Yes, also did that. They have luminaries, and you make your way into the main.
And it's only 3 nights a week. So now, did you take the camel or mules in at Petra, or did you walk?
We walked, but the last 20 minutes we had someone leading us on a horse, and Joyce Fritz managed to get off of the golden path, and we had to wait another hour for our guide to find her.
Oh, so,
no. Joyce.
Yeah.
It was fun. Thank you, Ken.
You're welcome.
All right.
Anybody else? I'm happy to answer. Al, I got your message. I'll go ahead and email that to you.
I got it. Randy was kind enough to send it.
Good. Randy, go ahead.
Yeah, I know you mentioned the global pre-check, and that sounds great.
Global
I have
entry.
well, I'm sorry, what's it called?
Global entry.
Global entry.
Which includes TSA pre-check.
And I only have the TSA pre-check, but the other thing I was wondering about that I've seen in some of the airports, Clear, I think it is, or coming to Sacramento, just a different option. Just stay with global entry as the best.
Clear in some places I've seen has less of a line. It's kind of a independent company, but for me, the fact that it hadn't been in Sacramento, it doesn't necessarily make sense. And it's something I'll look at, but I don't know how good it is for international, but it's kind of like TSA pre, but on steroids.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Hey, great lesson today. Great presentation.
Cool. All righty. So anybody else? I guess Al and Lisa, I can run this by you. Oh, Mary's back. Good. So Jane, are you done? We're going to do a quick little.
I am. Thank you very much for all the information.
You're welcome. Have a great one.
Thank you.
All right. So Mary and Dennis, any questions? You got any left? Are you good?
I'm good. Thanks.
Great. All right. So hang on here. I'm trying to get participants up. There we go. Oh God, I didn't want to report that. Okay. All right, guys. So I think it's only board members now, including my iPad. So
You're still live on YouTube.
Oh gosh, thank you. Stop share and And